Oh, these. I just love the double firing ports. This is insane. You have all heard of Theresienstadt, but unfortunately most of you only know of it due to the parts of town, the old fortress and its usage as a concentration camp during the latter part of the Second World War. However, that is far from what really is here to see. In fact, the town is an amazing and beautiful historic star fortress, one of the biggest and best ever constructed, with a lot of intricate battle stations, bastions, ravelins, and underground tunnels, ramparts, and fighting positions. And that is what we're going to visit today, and it really is worth seeing in person too. Theresienstadt is, at its core, a fine example of a planned, late 18th century, enlightened monarch town and fortress. The city is, as you would expect, laid out in a grid pattern. There are parks and statues interwoven across the uniform buildings, very military-like, and the fortifications are built as a star fortress, with a second minor fort on the other side of the river. And overall, it's a very consistent period piece, although upgraded throughout the years, and some of the parts have been put to different usage. Now, historically, Austria and Prussia were bitter rivals and fought a lot of wars and battles against each other until finally Prussia prevailed. The border regions, Saxony, Bohemia, Silesia, lay between the Habsburg Empire and Prussia, and were industrious and prosperous, and the Prussians were eyeing the region ever constantly. The Austrians, well aware of this, and in the War of the Austrian Succession, Austria had already lost the province of Silesia. So to protect the province of Bohemia, a fortress and a garrison town was constructed by Joseph II, son of Maria Theresia. The town is strategically placed on the confluence of the rivers Elbe, Laben, Eger. It sits along the main road running from Prague to Dresden. Effectively, any army crossing the Erzgebirge along the Elbe-Laben would be greeted by cannon fire from Theresienstadt fortress. It was constructed as a state-of-the-art fortification, built as a fortress town between 1780 and 1790. The huge construction, which, in the event of war, was to accommodate nearly 15,000 troops, consisted of several sections. In addition to the actual fortress town, the location of the river Ofer gave rise to the so-called small fortress. And here I will greatly, hopefully without offending anybody, look apart from the tragic World War II events here and focus on the amazing fortress here as well. The Theresienstadt fortress was never actually put to the ultimate military test, so it is in pretty good shape, and although it could do with some paint and maintenance, sadly, as the buildings themselves are extensively beautiful. However, the Austrians and Prussians eventually found peace and invaded France in 1870, so already by 1882 the fort was abandoned for good as a military fortress. So the small fortress then went on to serve as a state prison for the Austrian monarchy. Amongst others, Gavrilo Princip, the assassin at Sarajevo, was incarcerated here, and it would continue to be a prison here until some years after the Second World War had ended. On Tuesday, October 10th, 1780, Emperor Joseph II arrived at the construction site, and here he laid the foundation stone for the construction of the fortress. It was named in honor of the monarch's mother, Theresienstadt. This was the granary. They actually stored all the food for 70,000 soldiers in here. And they could have enough to feed them for 3.5 months. 70,000 soldiers for 3.5 months of storage. That's a bit of math that kind of hurts a little bit, because that's a lot. think the door's open. I mean, unless that's one of the barrack buildings, and to me it looks like an artillery fort. This is the old gatehouse. Well, the bridge looks very new. I'm sure it's been rebuilt. It were probably destroyed at some point, possibly, but at least it was restored. But there would have been a bridge here. Stay there. And again, here you can see how you will be able to put the bracers in to block access should an enemy protrude this far in the old fortress. Block this with heavy wood beams, just like you would in the tunnels. This is a very large, very elaborate fortress. Over here is the artillery bastion, and here firing ports, artillery ramp, and a long dry moat here as well, long dry ditch, completely with a covered firing position, firing gallery running alongside all of the ditch walls here, which is actually rather amazing. Here is the firing gallery. It runs all along the ditch wall. There's this long firing gallery running in here. Very impressive, actually. You have a gallery running down into the ditch, or the inner moat. You got the covered firing positions, even with a little ventilation hole. As you come out of here, have another ditch with firing positions all along in a covered shooting gallery in here. And I'm thinking there's artillery positions up here as well. They almost had to have been. I'm believing these are the powder magazines interspersed of the firing positions. This is really elaborate. I wonder if this was not a gun position back in the 1800s. Yes. I mean, this is the blockhouse, that the two buildings blocking the road entrance. And you have, again, this is the building that one of the buildings that defends this entrance. Let's see. This used to be something else. There must have been something here that's been torn down because of the railroad, I think. The total fortified area stretches over in 398 hectares. The construction was estimated to have cost 11 to 12 millions in gold. Construction work was carried out by 14,000 people from all parts of Austria. The total area of the fortification is of 67 hectares. Another more, 158 hectares, consists of 4 artificial flooding basins. The eastern part of the city stands in its original terrain on oak pylons and grates with stone filling due to the soft underground. Look, this is pretty much what you would cover with a cannon. This is the road running up there. This is where you'd have the break in the road. To get into the fortress, you could cover that from here. Over the gun port. The flow of the old river was artificially straightened, and a length of 4 new riverbeds was created. The underground corridor system reaches a total length of 29 kilometers. The total length of the surrounding wall is 3,770 meters. The ramparts are about 30 meters, and the height of the bastion from the bottom of the ditch is 12 meters. The original fortification had been preserved almost exclusively after the entire perimeter of the city in its form of a large oval ring with the starfish-like spiked bastions. Most of these buildings are made of a brickwork. So many of these were needed that 5 brick factories produced 20 million each year of the construction. The massive walls protected one of the most important defensive equipments, the floodgates to flood the fortification moat, and extensive floodplains around the fort to delay infantry. The chief designer of Theresienstadt was General Count Karl Pellegrini, and after 10 years he declared it combat worthy. The fortress represented the top of the bastion systems in the world. In terms of construction and tactics, the Fortress Theresienstadt is one of the most perfect fortification buildings in the world, and it represents a peak of fortress construction from the late 18th century. We get 1943, and we have the Masonic symbol, and we have 1938? That's a very interesting carving. Are there more of these?
Yeah, here.
Very interesting. Look at all this. People have been carving in these forever. And chisel and...
But some of them are very nicely done.
I mean, look at these. Well, figures, this is really something. Kameraden. FP. I mean, if you're gonna do graffiti, then you do it right. 1944, 1911. 1944. Is that 1941 or 1944? I think MG. I mean, this is really 1933 to 35. Wow.
Does it say the gate is?
What does it say?
The gate is guarded by the ghetto guards.
1944.
Yes.
And it's in Czech.
Yes.
So it was a Czech soldier who would have written it.
Yeah.
Wow. This is where
Look at the flowers.
This is where you say if the walls could only talk, and you hear the walls are talking.
This is like pussy.
And then you come right out into the ditch in front of 2 cannons on one side, going to the next ditch, and 2 cannons on the other. It is almost as if Vauban, he built this himself.
The sign is saying shooting range.
Does it? It will be the same here. 1834. Really have some history to this place as a fortress. And you come out here in this huge ditch. Lots of cannon positions, crew shelters, powder stores. There again. The fort consists of 3 parts. The main fortress, which forms a strengthened system surrounding the city on the left bank of the Water River. The small fortress situated on the right bank of the river, facing towards Prague. And fortified spaces located between the small and the great fortress. The defense consists of 3 systems. The first and most visible is the zone placed up in 3-fold cams of intercovering earth ramparts. They proceeded from the covering path, complemented by lunettes through the side trench to the counterguard, and ravelings with redoubts. Behind them, the main trench is still spread, then the court covered with pebbles and a wreath of 8 bastions, most of which are additionally equipped with retrenchments and cavaliers. They represent the last line of defense. Then there's the water system. The fort allowed to be controlled the flooded surrounding landscape and the ditches inside the fortifications as well. It allowed the defenders to damming and turn the entire river into the ditches. Over 3 meters high flood waves was then to destroy any enemy attempted to conquer the walls. The third system consists of tens of kilometers long underground spaces, composed of artillery casemates, dusters, labyrinth, connecting tunnels, walls, listening devices, mine corridors, winding on several floors. It is amazing.
See how easy this is to protect? You have an inner wall, you have a moat, and you have an outer wall.
The ramparts that are open up here with the old crew positions.
If they use it, they use it like 2 soldiers because
One load,
one
fire.
load, one yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, of course.
So
The Prussians would have 3 for a hold, so they could rotate faster.
yeah,
It's very interesting because at the same time, a similar army that's doing almost the same things, but they're all doing things just a little bit different, which makes it really interesting.
if I know something from history, I know that Prussians were like known for the best army.
Well, you have to remember it was a Prussian that taught Washington across the Delaware and taught the American Revolutionary Army to fight. So this is really a cool place because you can stand in here and fight inside the city, and you can stand in here and you can fight inside the tunnels.
Yes.
Or you can stand out the tunnels. No, okay, that is a bit of a push, but this is the first time I've seen a fighting compartment where you can fight inside the fort in every direction.
Yes.
I love this place. Black powder guns, they have a tendency of being very messy.
Yeah, like the.
Okay. Now there's some insanely beautiful buildings in this town. This is amazing. You have firing positions in every direction, inside and outside. This is overkill. This is almost German. This is Austrian. That explains everything. So this never saw anything other than black powder guns and cannons. It never was upgraded or anything.
No, it wasn't. Because the place, like the whole setup was made for the cannons that could like. Their range wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it would have done okay until 1885.
Yeah.
1885, then new guns, everything would change.
Yeah. Just said again.
What a stupidly amazing place. There's a counterscarp tunnel that's prepared. Or a counter mining tunnel, and there's another that's prepared. Awesome. And another. And actually walk quite nicely upright here.
This was the storing for the gunpowder. Okay. No.
Ja, wie du
But it wasn't. It was. It should. It could be used only when they were attackers. So they put their gunpowder, and these are not the fire.
This ventilation.
Yes, this is the
Yeah,
ventilation.
this it gets very
It's
wet in here.
Yes, and he told out that this ventilation doesn't have a hole on the second side because it is built like
It
this,
goes-
and then.
Oh, so it goes,
Yes.
yeah. Still, there should be more ventilation. And lighting, there's no light. How would they light up the power store? Of course, also a huge amount of drainage and sewers had to be installed to accommodate the enormous fortress. It was also the most modern system in Europe. And after the Napoleonic Wars, had a large modern hospital installed here. And fortunately, all the original buildings have survived, but sadly, most of them sit abandoned and unmaintained. The fortress was built on a swamp originally, which makes it really impressive, considering the fortress was never attempted to be reinforced like many others with cement or steel. It was simply too obsolete, and it would never have made sense to attempt to upgrade it to a modern war. Also, given the geographic location, there was little need. So what we're seeing here is the best of the 18th, 19th century warfare. Tunnels inside ravines and ramparts, and countermining tunnels, already pre-cut. This is where the medieval castle meets the modern, low-cut bastion fortress, one which would make Vauban proud, and the most modern one in Europe. Although some of the lunettes and ravelins were upgraded in 1866 when it was feared that the Prussian army might attack the fort, hectic improvements were made to the fortifications, including the mining of the bridges.
What was this cannon? Just like 6 pound? What kind of cannon did they have here?
That could be anything. What they got, they could put it and.
So it's not like they had 6 pounder there, 12 pounder there, 24 pounder on the roof.
It was different. And I think he said before that they weren't shooting balls.
No, here they would be shooting grape shot.
Yes.
Or something.
Yes.
Yeah, plus ammunition.
These switches to light up. It's just special for you that you want to record anything. You have no time to record this. You can record this all. Or this.
So, powder store?
Okay, yeah.
Powder store again?
Yes, I will
Love
say.
it.
In back. So we'll go in dark then when you have it.
Holy crap, this is... So, I just run through, do I come back?
You can wait there if you want.
You can turn the light off, I have light.
Yes?
Yeah, I got light. I am following some sort of a nocturnal creature here. I have woken up. I love these guys. These people are so nice here. And you have all the counter mines here, all the counter tunnels right here that are prepared but not in use. I have no idea how far this is or how long this is. We are just going. It's brilliant. The roof is coming a little closer to my head. Brilliant. So, this is how you do tunnels.
No to je ono, říkám, byli 150-160 cm.
Brilliant.
Do you want to know interesting facts?
Yes.
The soldiers were picked with the height only 150 and 160, so they can go there and be straight posture.
And still wear their hat.
Yes.
Yes.
With everything.
With everything.
They should be able to fit there.
I know, I was starting to feel a little air over my head there that I was coming a little close. I love this place. This is...
So this is the spy spot. So the soldier, just listen.
He would have the listening post in here.
Yes, yes.
And he would be listening for counter for mines and sappers from the other side.
Yes, and he would probably take them apart, these
Yeah.
bricks, and throw their mines, or I don't know how to
Or
imagine.
he would be sitting in there with a clay pot or something.
I think that there were chairs before.
And these letters are actually original, aren't they? This is original writing to the 1800s, isn't it?
Which?
967. The letters.
I don't know.
Here? These?
Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are from early 1800, 1800s. Yes.
Yeah, but you don't write that way anymore.
No.
You should, but I mean, I've seen old Prussian letters. It's not easy.
Ale dneska to se nehodí, takže
This is insane.
to,
A už to nenajdem.
to bychom museli odloužit. No. Jenomže právě, že tady
All the
jsou
tunnels
ty
are coming
čísla,
together.
který říkají, kdybych neměl vás, taky budu ukazovat ty čísla. Takže dlouho se s nima nechodí.
A hlavně si všímali pomalu, jako mám fakt strašnou zjistí takže
Jo,
hlavně by to bylo pro ně ještě víc uzmorný, to je rád, to jsme říkáme.
Tak já si myslím, že to je lepší, tak už to všechno rád.
no to každopádně.
I have no idea how far this gets out of me. But yes, so short soldiers chosen for the fortress, I get it. I am, at this point, just ever so slightly bending my neck at this point.
Taky jsou nějaký.
Než sem projde, tak já to napíšu vám.
And all these tunnels, all the bastions are just filled with tunnels. Preparing countermining is awesome.
So you can take the basket, put it somewhere, you fill it with the dirt, and you hide behind it.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like a little mobile, it's like a giant sandbag.
Yes.
That's
So,
so brilliant.
and they made these there because they use these.
Yeah, it's a wicker basket.
Yes. They took these, put it in the box, then put it in the river, so they would bend. Yes. And they made these there, and they used them. So it was like
That's brilliant.
everything made there was. There were cannons,
Yeah.
not bad, but they used this place to image like
So each soldier had his own bed.
yes.
That's unusual. They usually split like 4 or 5 people together.
Okay, but it's not like a actually was sleep. One was
They were
just
not functional.
chill, yes.
So, but when they slept in their own bed.
Yes.
Okay.
3 people for one bed.
Because if you were French or you Prussian or every other fortress, they had like 4, 5, 6 in a row, and they would sleep next to each other for the longest time.
Over.
So yeah, so that's like still a luxury,
Yeah.
even if you share.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there was an enemy, they closed the door, and you see this is the tight spot, so you couldn't like kick the doors,
Yeah.
and with the axe you could not do anything because there's the wall behind you.
Yeah, you can't really swing anything here.
Yes, so that was like
Well thought out.
planned. Yeah.
At least there was a plan.
Yes.
If it wasn't for you two, I wouldn't actually have understood anything of this, so there you go.
The inner line of the fortifications of the main fortress consists of an elongated octagon with 8 pentagonal bastions with casemates, serving as stores, warehouses, army barracks, and hospitals. The number of curtains were the same. The main ditch extended around this line, in which the fortification element, the middle line of defenses, were located: pincers, ravelins, and counter guards. The main ditch could be flooded if necessary, using sluice gates, either in whole or in part. A double caponnier led to the northern arrow. It was built only in 1813. The area of both retrenchments served exclusively for military purposes. It was planned to use its free space as a camp for troops in the event of military campaigns. If necessary, this part could also be flooded with water. However, the fortress itself was a closed complex. Its connection with the outside world was enabled only by 6 gates with drawbridges. The garrison of the fortress was to consist of 5,655 men in peacetime, and in wartime it could be doubled. There were 153 gunpowder warehouses in all of the fortress elements, which could hold up to 1,420 tons of powder. In the 2nd Cavalier there was a flood warehouse and a bakery. There were hay and fodder supplies for 6,500 horses. All the materials was to enable the feeding of the garrison of the fortress and the field army of 60,000 men for 3.5 months. The underground galleries and tunnels of Theresienstadt Fortress is a perfect network of underground mines, listening passages, with a total length of 29 to 30 kilometers. This time, the system of passages is quite diverse too, both in size and architectural design.
This is just one of those things. This must be the reason why forts cost so much to build.
Ever since the late 18th century, parts of this fortress had already been used as a prison. So by the time of the outbreak of World War I, displaced peoples had already been interned here as well. Then later, after 1914, Russian and later Italian prisoners also were sent here, and a large prisoner of war camp sprang up way past the boundaries of the fort. Unfortunately, all of the fort's buildings have survived, and are still those we see here today, which had been constructed for the military use originally.
And this was where the SS guards lived, with their families and the camp commander. And then there are tunnels, crematoria, and of course you have offshoots in every direction in here. And all through here is up the ramp. See more firing positions, firing slits in the walls. This was all guided to funnel the enemy around inside the fortress walls if they could pass the moat that was full of water, so they could get them in positions where they could fire at them. Pointing into the moat, this is where they would funnel the enemy from the wall that would collapse or built to collapse, so they could funnel the enemy in here and fire at them from all directions. You see the firing ports lower here in the side, and in the wall in the center there are positions as well. It's absolutely fascinating how fortresses are constructed and built and designed, and how everything learned from these fortresses were put into use both in World War I and World War II constructions. Get into the inner of the fort. This is a firing position to block off half of a hallway inside the hallways of the old moat, so you could shield wherever came this way. That is just really, really interesting, because I did not know they had defensive positions inside the hallways at this stage. And now we're looking at what, 1700, 1800, 1600. So here you could stand and defend either way. And here you had the firing ports leading into the moat. This is something else. This is something I did not expect. To be quite honest. Really won't walk, the young man said. He was right. Here's another one. Close defensive positions. Wow. Did not know we were advanced to that point. I need to go back in time and study castles. And you see walkways bricked up. Except these are 300 years old. But they look the same as when you brick up the ones in World War II. So I'm literally walking along inside the moat, and on both sides of the moat there are firing positions to anybody who could break through and lead into the moat. And you know what? Here at the end of this are something that looks like firing positions, But this is firing positions that would lead into. It seemed very out of character for what I would expect to see. That is exactly what this is. This is a firing position. Did not think. Very interesting. It is amazing what you find inside forts and moats and underground. I suppose mostly you find me running around with a camera talking to myself. That's not strange. It's full of firing ports. It's not just 3 or 4, it is the whole wall. Interesting evolution. And here you should try the other way, yes. Yes. Here you see down the moat, down the length of the moat. And here you see to the little corner there. This is so similar to what we see World War I, World War II. Can't say anything but that the Russians, can't say anything but the Prussians had a good idea how to wage wars and defense. See the firing ports into the moat? So people would get into the moat and then they could be fired upon from the sides here. That was the whole point. See what the firing port is just fascinating. So you could run inside here with your enemy on the outside and just shoot them. At least we know where the technology came from. Which is really interesting because these are just like defensive firing ports you would see 100 years later, 200 years later. People are doing firing ports, little firing slits, doing moats with firing slits. Then the French, Belgians built big moats for machine guns with firing slits. Of course the Prussians did the same. Next you had moats with firing ports with cannons in the Maginot Line. It's an interesting evolution. Life really is all about tunnels. Oh, my life. Well, we're gonna love the tunnels. Life is all about tunnels. Well, my life is all about tunnels. This is actually a really cool looking tunnel. It was 200-300 years old. Inside the defensive works. That was never attacked because, well, there really wasn't any reason to attack it where it was. Oh, you gotta love this. These may be hard to replicate. Fortunately, inside this little defensive room. Not much different than what was built 300 years later in the bunker positions for defense. Now on the outside of this there's 2. See the thickness of the walls going on here. When you come outside there's actually 2. And these were set up to guard the bridge to the fort.
Despite its sinister use during the Second World War, it is easy to see how these dormitories for soldiers have been easily converted to prison cells and holdings long before the Second World War. And like many other fortresses, when obsolete by the time of the Second World War, they were converted to prison camps during the Second World War, and after that, internment camps for German soldiers and other displaced or relocated people.
These are the single cells. And they do look nicer. Big original doors, definitely. Amazing place. I'm curious what was in here when this was all it was, a fortress. These must have been quarters. Some ventilation. The insides of the women's barracks looks pretty much the same as the men's bathrooms, although the single cells, solitary cells, are a little nicer than the men's. There's a bathroom in them.
It's strange to consider the similarities between a military installation and a prison. It all needs roughly the same logistics, and the big military dorms were well suitable for a large number of prisoners housed here. It also gives us an idea of how the soldiers might have lived in the years before that.
And again, it's pretty much cold everywhere. The end of the various moats, just like in the more modern forts of the Maginot Line. The famous escape from Theresienstadt ghetto. The ghetto there was under control of the SS and run by the Gestapo. And they literally climbed the moat. That would fill here from the river, so it would have been full of water. Climbed that and escaped.
After 1918, the town and the fort was returned to a newly independent Czechoslovakia, and many of the powder magazines began to be accommodating small businesses and stores of foods and vegetables. Life went on blissfully here, with the occasional military parades of soldiers still stationed here, sporting events. It was possibly the nicest time of the fortress town. Sadly, it never truly recovered after the Second World War events. In 1947, Theresienstadt was proclaimed Memorial of National Suffering. The whole city then, in the year of 1992, declared a conservation area And it is a little sad that this beautiful place is only known for the suffering from only a few years of its tragic history, when it should also be lived in and maintained as a fortress museum of one of the greatest forts ever made. Great people of the Fortress Museum are still trying to highlight the centuries of military fortress history here as well. They do set up living history events and reenactments, and they do a great job, but obviously, as all fortresses are, they're underfunded. The condition of the buildings were not helped when in 2002 it was completely flooded for a while. The center of the city, the fortress, national cemeteries, paths, fields, meadows, and of course, the labyrinth of passages underground. It is still an amazing place worth seeing. The old buildings of the Austrian Hungarian Empire, it is a throwback to a time as very little have changed. And I hope funding can be found to restore some of the collapsing buildings, because they are amazing to see. There is much more here to see than just the years of tragedy of the Second World War. And the restaurants are pretty good too.
My name is Tino Struckmann. I run Lost Battlefields. Every year, I travel around the world to try to bring you to all the most interesting historical military locations from modern wars and the World War II special projects, battlefields, forts, fortresses, and tunnels, everything else. Things you may not be able to see or go to yourselves. Please join me on Patreon or join Lost Battlefields through the website so you get access to all my files and my notes. It really does help, and like, follow, share here on the channel if you can. That helps too.